A 2-0 start to the season for Duke men's basketball and a really special, unique, cool, so many amazing adjectives. You could describe the opportunity that Duke has today playing basketball at Army.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today on Tuesday, November 11th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. We're proudly a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcasting network in the world, your team every day. It is November 11th, and later today, Duke basketball will be playing against Army here on Veterans Day. Certainly want to honor, celebrate, and thank all of the many men and women who have served this great country. And what a cool and unique experience it is for this Duke basketball team to head up to West Point. First time since 1997-98 that Duke will play here, and a chance to watch it all unfold a little bit later this evening. We'll break it all down with our pal Hugh Straine from Ball Durham. Excited to talk the X's and O's about this game and the 2-0 start for Duke basketball. Again, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Go ahead and take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, watch us each and every day on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciative of all the support from you guys. So without further ado, Hugh Straine is back with me on the show today. Man, I hope you're doing well, and let's get after it. How are things going in your world?
Going pretty good. 2-0 start. Excited to, kind of get more of this Duke team as the game goes on. We're not going to get too much from the team with these kind of bye games that over the next two, or I guess next three if you count Western Carolina. But, good to see the team kind of keep gelling, keep, getting better, and just good to see what we've got with this team as each game progresses.
Yeah, tonight to be playing in West Point at Army on Veterans Day, really special, dude, that this has come together. Obviously, this is a Duke team that is 9-0 all time. Duke basketball 9-0 all time against Army, but just the second time ever they're playing at West Point. And when the game was played in the 97-98 season, there was no television coverage. So it'll be the first time ever, a little bit later on CBS Sports Network today at 7 p.m. Eastern, that people get to watch Duke basketball in this building on Veterans Day of all days.
Yeah, I think just a super cool opportunity that I'm sure John Shire, the rest of his staff are very honored to be a part of on Veterans Day, representing your country and just provide the students of Army an amazing basketball game. I mean, Army, they're 1-1 to start the season, but they've got a pretty talented backcourt, and they've got some talent on that roster. The backcourt of Kevin McCarthy and Jackson Furman averaging both over 16 points a game. Super fun team to watch. They can score at a premium. So again, I think games like this with Western Carolina, with Army, Duke's got Indiana State after Army, just figuring out what Duke has in this team, what works for Shire, what doesn't. All the X's and O's, all the intangibles, and just letting these guys get better before they take on Kansas at MSG in a few weeks in a monster game.
Yeah, the chemistry pieces are still being kind of ironed out for any team at this time of the season. So for the third game coming up here for Duke, it'll be an opportunity for them to get off to another quick start against an Army squad, as you said, that's got impressive scores in their own right. Duke did a remarkable job against Western Carolina defensively. The Catamounts did jump out to that 4-0 lead, a screenshot opportunity for folks there in Cullowhee to celebrate leading Duke by 4. But that was it. Duke went on a massive run from there. Coach John Shire brought in kind of the platoon system, 4 subs in off the bench right away, and then Duke never looked back and picked up that 41-point victory. Kind of big picture thoughts from the Western Carolina game, Hugh. What do you think?
What I'm seeing through these first couple games for Duke is I think defensively they're much farther along than they are offensively. Not to say they're weak by any means on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense has just been absolutely dominant from every third of the floor. Duke limited Western Carolina to 30% shooting from the field, 4 of 26 shooting from 3. Right now I have one of the highest, or I guess lowest, defensive three-point shooting percentages, only allowing opponents to shoot 36.4% 20.9% from three-point range. Apologize, but unbelievable three-point defense, and the perimeter defense all around from every Blue Devil has been great. I think Shire is building his team similar to what he did last year with just elite length, elite versatility, and it's just so hard for opponents to game plan for. And that's what we saw against Western Carolina. It's what we saw against Texas too. The offense has had its struggles. These ruts kind of continue, but the defense is looking like it could be, again, the best defensive team in college basketball. There's so many guys on the floor that can defend the 1 through 4 with a couple that can defend the 1 through 5. So I think just seeing how Duke can switch 5, the defensive versatility, I think the defense is much further along than the offense, but that's not to necessarily discredit the offense. It's just the defense looks so elite.
Yeah, it was fun to be in the building on Saturday for the game against Western Carolina for a Duke defense that over the course of 40 minutes, they went 7 Western Carolina went 7 full minutes of game action without scoring. There are the sequences you could put up there where you talk about, you haven't made a shot from the floor in X number of minutes, but maybe every once in a while your team's able to get to the free throw line. That wasn't the case for Western. They didn't score for 7 full minutes of game action. Really impressive performance there defensively from Duke.
Yeah, Duke only allowing Western Carolina to shoot 11 free throws throughout the entirety of the game. And you can play elite and aggressive defense all you want, but if you're fouling, it essentially doesn't really matter. But Duke is playing clean defense, and they're playing connected defense throughout the entire 40 minutes. And I think it's extremely impressive when you think about just how new this team is. It's so impressive how quickly Jon Scheyer coaches his guys to play elite defense without fouling so quickly, because Duke had it from the get-go in their exhibition games against UCF and then against Tennessee. And then we saw it against Texas in a game Duke absolutely could have lost. Yeah. The offense was just not there. The ruts were there, but the defense kept them in the game. And when you can play defense without fouling, it puts you in such a better position to succeed because it takes so much more pressure off your offense. So just really impressed with how the switchability of Duke is, how connected they're playing, how aggressive they're playing, just the active hands by everybody. And they are going to be a nightmare for teams to game plan for really all season long.
Hugh, I'm really glad that you talked about the offense not being as far along as the defense is. And it's important to point that out and take people back to a season ago when Duke was in this same spot. It's very easy for us to remember Duke basketball and their Final Four team by the finished product, right? By how unbelievable they were throughout the course of the season, how efficient they were offensively and defensively, that you can forget it was a slow start offensively to get into a rhythm, to figure out who's got the ball in what situations, when you get into certain sets, do these certain things. And it's so clear that right now Duke is trying to figure all of those things out offensively, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. But I don't think there has been anything at all in the first 2 games that should make you absolutely panic about the Duke team offensively. It's still just too early to do that.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Duke's too talented to ever panic on any side of the ball for them. There's just so many mouths to feed, and you're trying to figure out what works, who can take the big shots at what times, and who needs the ball in their hands the majority of the time. But yeah, Duke finished the season last season as the only team in the nation ranked top 5 in both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency at KenPom. They're actually top 10 in offensive efficiency right now at KenPom. Just the percentages aren't quite there, but that just comes with a new team, and especially such a young team. And as they gel, it's a lot easier, I think, to gel quickly defensively than it is offensively, because there's so many more little things to figure out on the offensive side of the ball. There's more just principles defensively that the guys follow, and once they're connected and communicate well, which Duke has been doing great, you can play elite defense when you have guys who are already extremely talented defenders. But on the offensive side of the ball, you have so many more things to figure out, like who's going to get the ball, what sets are going to run more often, who's going to be on the floor with who, and that's just what they're figuring out. And it's a big reason why Jon Scheyer's schedule is such a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule year in and year out. In just a few weeks, Duke has a few bye games to sort of figured out, and then they've got to take on Kansas. Granted, Kansas just fell to UNC. It looks like it might be another disappointing season for Bill Self and the Jayhawks. I think Darren Peterson's really the only true pro prospect on that entire roster. But a game at a neutral court at Madison Square Garden, which Duke owns all time. Yep. The game Duke should certainly win, because there's a chance that Kansas falls out of the AP poll entirely by that time. But a game Duke should have, and a game they have a couple weeks to prepare for. But again, offensively, they're just going to have to figure some things out, who has the ball in their hands the majority of the time, and who's getting action run for them on a consistent basis.
Dude, and some of it just comes down to making shots at the end of possessions. And Duke had a game this past Saturday in which Isaiah Evans goes 1 of 8 from the floor. Duke went 3 of 17 from 3-point range in the first half. Those things you got to clean up, and it takes a little bit to get into a rhythm, and you'll start to see all those shots fall throughout the course of the season. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about this Duke team. How about Kaden Boozer? Guy's an absolute star. He'll continue to lead the way this season for Duke. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the NBA action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the league. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Welcome back in here to Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Hugh Straine from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke team 2 games into the season, some of their offensive and defensive struggles that you might have seen so far for Duke, although a 41-point victory for the Blue Devils against Western Carolina. Not as many issues on the defensive side of the floor, and the biggest highlight, of course, has been the recent play of Kaden Boozer after scoring a measly 15 points against Texas. Good to see Kaden Boozer back in the 20-plus point department. Obviously, he's a great player. 25 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists against Western Carolina. What did you see out of him, Hugh?
I just think he looked more comfortable right away, obviously against a lesser opponent, but he looked dominant, was looking for his own offense. He's got a similar stat line in a way to Cooper Flagg last year. Right now, Boozer's leading Duke in all 5 major statistical categories. He's already averaging over 20 and 10 a game. But I thought his outing against Texas really just proved how elite he really was. Scoreless in the first half, and you still end up with a double-double, and fans across the country were like, that's it? So I think when you got a guy like Kaden Boozer who can go for a double-double, basically all of that production in the second half alone, and people are still like, that's it. It really just shows how elite of a player he really is. He's not as much of a gifted athlete as A.J. DeBonsa and Darren Peterson, who are kind of the other 2 freshmen in that big 3, if you will. But he just scores at will. He's Duke's best passer. He's Duke's best rebounder. And he's Duke's best scorer all in one player. I don't necessarily know yet if he's Duke's most important player on both sides of the ball, but he's obviously Duke's most talented player. He's in the conversation to be the number 1 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. But I just thought he looked more comfortable, used his body to get to the basket a lot more because his feet aren't necessarily quick enough for him to move off of defenders with ease and kind of use finesse. He's got to use his body, which is fine. But I think he's figuring out how to do that at the college game. I think against Flory Badunga in Kansas, that's going to be a great test for him, but he's got a couple games to sort of figure that out. I think he looked great, looked more comfortable. He's definitely Duke's best player. He's going to get a touch on almost every single possession, but really happy what I saw for him. I think the 5 assists is just another phenomenal stat line. His vision is so great. As soon as he sees a double come, he does such a good job of kicking it out, and his teammates do such a good job of making themselves available. So I thought a great outing, and I think he's just going to keep getting better.
Dude, a tale of 2 halves in some ways shooting the ball for Kaden Boozer in this game against Western Carolina. The first half, he goes 1 of 5 from 3-point range. He made his first 3-pointer in the deep corner there in the first half, but then missed 4 straight. So 1 of 5 in that first half, and then responds, comes back out in that second half and goes 3 of 4 from 3-point range to level out kind of his percentages and that sort of thing. It's just crazy, man, to see him be able to score at all 3 levels and getting to the free throw line. Once again, we talked about in that Texas game, you get to the free throw line, you see it go in a couple of times, it really opens you up. Kaden Boozer was shooting free throws against the Catamounts once again, and that kind of helps his overall scoring total at the end when you're able to see the ball go in at the free throw line and make them. This Duke team has got to prioritize free throw shooting each and every year, particularly this year. Dame Sarr went just 2 of 5 from the charity stripe. A couple of other guys had some misses, but Kaden Boozer's been pretty money so far at the line.
Yeah, Dame Sarr has been struggling from the free throw line throughout the first 2 games, but, back on Boozer, I think his outside shooting struggles and his willingness to keep going just, again, speaks on his confidence. I think this guy knows that he has a potential to be the best player in college basketball, and he's one of those guys that can miss 2, 3, 4 shots in a row, and he just got to see one go down, and he'll continue to take the next shot. So I think his ability to score on all 3 levels of the floor really just speaks to how important he is to this Duke team and how he just diversifies that offense so much more because he's such a difficult guy to game plan for because you can take him early in the shot clock and he can back you down in the post, and you got to put your big on him, potentially double him, or you can come out for a three. He can shoot in the mid-range, and he's got a handle as well. But he's going to be such a problem for defenses to game plan for all year long. And with shooters everywhere around him, it just makes Duke such a versatile offense, and one that defenses are going to have a nightmare of a time trying to figure out how to beat.
Let's get to his brother, Kaden Boozer, who had a really great game against Western Carolina, immediately comes in, pushes the tempo, gets up the floor so quickly, hits Nick Khamenia for a wide open three on the wing, had a lob up to Malik Brown on his first possession there, finished the game with 5 assists, grabbed 7 rebounds. Awesome to use his 6'5" frame to get down there and help Duke in the rebounding efforts. Made his first college three-pointer on a play assisted by his brother Kaden Boozer, in which Carlos Boozer was right there underneath the baseline as it all happened. That was really cool to see the Boozer family moment there in that one. But Kaden Boozer finishes with 14 points. All around, really, really impressive game from Kaden Boozer.
Yeah, Caleb Foster struggled with foul trouble. He only played, I believe, 18 minutes, and then Foster played 27. So
Boozer, yeah.
Sorry. I'm gonna keep doing that all season. I'll get better. But I actually wrote a piece on that this morning for Ball Durham, how I think the point guard conversation, at least in the starting spot, is starting to become a little bit more of a conversation, because Caleb Foster has been elite defensively. He's been awesome on the perimeter, but we have seen him not really look for his own offense. He's had some solid passes. He's averaging around 3 assists a game, but Kaden Boozer, for a freshman who is coming off the bench in the point guard spot, looks so comfortable. Again, he's pushing the pace. He's got a high basketball IQ. He's also an extremely talented passer. He can get to the rim, and he also plays elite defense. We haven't seen his outside shooting numbers be there quite yet, but in high school, he showed he has the ability to shoot from the outside. I think it's becoming a really interesting conversation, and I think it will, especially as the season goes on and Duke faces some higher opponents. Who's going to start at that point guard spot? Granted, it's not – I don't think it's a massive development whether who starts or not, because I still think Foster and Boozer will both play similar minutes. Yeah. Kaden Boozer has looked comfortable. He's an elite passer, and he runs the floor in transition. And I think Duke's offense has been at its best when it's pushing the pace and it's getting looks early in the shot clock, because they move the ball well. They've got guys that can attack from 3 levels, and Kaden Boozer has done an awesome job leading the charge in that transition offense. I think Foster has been just as elite defensively and probably better defensively, but Boozer's offensive instincts, his IQ, and just his production on the offensive side of the ball, I think sparks the debate that, maybe Shire throws out 3 freshmen, and I think Boozer might be fighting for that starting point guard spot. Yeah,
I mean, he's just able to do so much with how quickly he pushes the tempo and kind of gets Duke into sets and looks for guys all over the floor. What I also love, and I think there's an element of this to Caleb Foster's game, right now we're seeing a lot of attacks directly to the rim by Foster, and he's able to finish pretty well. I love what he's able to do kind of in that stretch. But for Kaden Boozer, he's so good at kind of getting these paint touches and then the lob right at the rim. There were a couple of times, I'm going to be curious to see if this continues to be a thing, where I thought Duke got too lob happy on some rolls with everybody. But what I particularly appreciated out of Kaden Boozer was the lob has been working. Throw the defense off a little bit. This time go for the floater. And his float game has been really impressive. I know that was one of the big things in his high school kind of scouting report that people were immediately noticing out of Kaden Boozer. Wasn't necessarily the 3-point shot like we talked about, but man, he's such a good facilitator. He's put a ton of work into that float shot because he understands the lob's been there. Now I've got to look to score for myself sometimes too.
Yeah, that 2-man game, pick and roll action between the brothers, Cameron and Cayden, I think is going to be dominant as the season goes on. But the thing with Cayden is I think he just makes the right play all the time. He comes off a roll and he knows whether to give it up, to take it, sort of, shield the defender off, be patient with the ball. And I think his basketball IQ really just sets him apart. He came in as a 4-star prospect, but I think he's one of the best point guards in this class. Him and Mikael Brown Jr. will be an awesome game to watch throughout the 2 matchups that Duke and Louisville will play together. But I think it's a good conversation to have. And I'm just really impressed with Boozer's maturity and how he just seems to make the right play time in and time out on the offensive side of the ball. He's also 6'4", so Duke isn't giving up any positional height at the point guard spot if Shire eventually does elect to start Boozer. But I'm really impressed with Boozer's game. Foster's been elite defensively, but I think Boozer's offensive arsenal is definitely further along and, could spark a debate like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and there will be opportunities for Duke to have both guys out on the floor together. I'm curious what that dynamic will continue to look like in the games to come. All right, let's we got to take our final break here on the show today. There's still a Sarr conversation to be had. Nick Khamenia, those guys are in quite a battle positionally as well. So we'll break it all down here in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football back, and we couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands, and so much more. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless waiting queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. All those things are terrible. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about the favorite college football games for as low as $25. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we keep going here with Hugh Straine for Ball Durham, talking Duke basketball. A game later today, taking on Army, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it on CBS Sports Network. First time since the 97-98 season that Duke has played in West Point. We've talked about Kaden Boozer, talked about the Kaden Boozer and Caleb Foster dynamic. There's tons of conversation right now about the mix between Sarr and Nick Khamenia. Saw a whole lot of Nick Khamenia in the exhibition games for Duke, but now in 2 regular season games, it's been Sarr who's been the starter, and the greater conversation around Duke basketball, even national folks are talking about this. It's just how young, how raw of a prospect we're really seeing Sarr to be thus far.
Yeah, I think just his physicality certainly needs some work. He's 6'8" and just 190 pounds. I think he's looked uncomfortable at times because he's very willing to get downhill, get to the basket. He crashes the glass, but he just seems like he's getting bullied out there at times. He went 0 for 4 shooting against Western Carolina, but Nick Khamenia hasn't necessarily set himself apart as the true starter.
Right.
He's been more of a willing outside shooter. He went 2 for 6 from the field against Western Carolina, but all 6 of those shots were threes. Again, he's a great defender, high basketball IQ, but I think the reason Sarr is still starting is just because he's further along defensively, and neither freshman has really set themselves apart from an offensive standpoint. Both have similar makeups. Both can hit it from the outside, they can get to the rim, and they can pass really well. But neither of them have really set themselves apart as the true starter that I think Shire obviously needs to go with. I could very well see against Army tonight, and then against Indiana State, maybe throw Khamenia out there at the starting 5, see what happens. But they both played more or less similar minutes over the first 2 games of Duke's season. I just think Sarr is further along defensively, especially on the perimeter. That's why Shire continues to go with him, at least the first 2 games. But his weight is certainly a problem. He definitely looks like he's getting moved around and kind of moved at will by the bigs of opponents so far. But I just don't think Khamenia set himself apart offensively to put himself in a full-time starting role. And it's kind of one of those situations where it doesn't really matter, I don't think, who starts, because they both play fairly similar minutes and they can both be on the floor at the same time. But I think Sarr is still playing really good defense. He has awesome active hands. He just got to put in a little muscle. And yeah, I definitely think he was underrated as much of a raw prospect as he was because he played professionally overseas. And obviously you'd think when he plays professionally overseas that he's such a developed guy, but he's really young. He's 18. He's 190 pounds at 6'8". He's definitely got a ton of room to grow. Super intriguing NBA draft prospect, I think, for 2026.
For sure. I think obviously don't sell stock in these guys. They're both going to be big players for Duke throughout the course of the year. What's interesting is when you dive further into the box score against Western Carolina, Darren Harris played more minutes than both of these guys for Duke. Darren Harris had 3 assists. Nick had just 1. Sarr didn't have any. Both Sarr and Nick Khamenia had turnovers. Darren Harris did not. Although in a game in which Darren Harris played 22 minutes, he didn't officially attempt a single 3-point shot. The 1 3-point shot he put up, he was fouled on, went to the line and made all 3 free throws, had a great backdoor cut in which Malik Brown found him underneath for an easy lay-in there. I'm impressed with what we've seen out of Darren Harris, although I think the message from a lot of Duke fans and this Duke coaching staff to him afterwards, I know, is that, man, 22 minutes out there on the floor, you're the shooter. Like, you got to find some opportunities to get Darren Harris some looks for the outside. But it's very clear, especially when you add in Sebastian Wilkins redshirting now, that when there's this big conversation about Khamenia and Sarr, it's an even greater opportunity for Darren Harris to enter the fold to become a part of that conversation, right?
Yeah, we've seen some action run for him to get shots off. He's got such a quick release, catches the ball in a shooter's position really high. I just don't think he's the type of player to force any shot. He doesn't seem willing to take shots that he doesn't think he can make, which is fine, and he'll dish it out. But he impacts the floor in so many different ways. He's another great defender. He passes. He's constantly moving off the ball. And he's just one of those guys that really creates a lot of different offensive looks for the Blue Devils. We talked about it in the preseason, JJ. I thought his role was going to be very similar to Isaiah Evans last year, where he's on the floor a lot, almost maybe as a decoy sometimes, because he's always a constant threat to shoot from the outside, but isn't necessarily filling up the stat sheet. Isaiah Evans only averaged about 6 points a game last year. So I think there's going to be some games where Darren Harris has taken 4, 5, 6 threes. I think there's games where he's going to take in anywhere between 0 and 2, but he impacts the floor at 6'6" in a bunch of different other ways. He's a really confident shooter and moves off the ball really well. I think he's going to play a consistent role off the bench. And I think he's just another good addition to this team. I don't know if I just don't see a world where he's ever kind of the star of the show unless Duke really needs him, at least on a consistent basis. But I think just the length of Sarr and Khamenia will consistently leave them in the starting lineup, and they're probably a little bit further along athletically. But Harris's energy, his shooting ability, and just the fact that he's always a constant threat will get him minutes all season long.
I feel like it's at this point, it'll be good for him to be reminded of the fact that, like, you're one of the guys. Like, you've earned this. Because in some ways you could look at 22 minutes, only one shot attempt officially for Darren Harris, as somebody who gets the assists, got a rebound, is trying not to mess up in some ways because you've waited so long for this playing time. And mentally that could be something for these young players to go through. He'll get more comfortable with this or whatever, but it's like, dude, you're one of our guys. Go out there, make a play. Don't be afraid to take these shots.
Yeah, I think that might be, one of the little differences between Isaiah Evans and Darren Harris, because as I'm sure we all remember, when Isaiah Evans got his moment against
he wasn't afraid.
Second, 18 points in the first half, just an unbelievable outing, and he established himself as a key part of the rotation for the rest of the season. Maybe we're just seeing Darren Harris a little bit more conservative, doesn't want to seem trigger happy, wants to stay on the floor, obviously. He's a sophomore and he's looking to make a name for himself, and he's a great 3-and-D prospect to be scouted for the next level. So I think he's just waiting for his shots. He's waiting for his moment. And I think that's totally fine. I'm sure Shire is telling him something along those lines. Don't force it. The shots will come, because he knows how talented of a shooter that Harris is, and Harris knows that too. But I think just as time goes on, he'll get more comfortable, because he hardly saw any time at all last year. So it's really difficult to, get acclimated really quickly when you hardly saw any time whatsoever a season ago. But really like his game. Again, talented shooter. He defends the ball. And he moves off the ball really well to just create different looks for this offense. So I'm not worried about it. I think just as the season goes on, he's going to gain confidence naturally. I think he's going to be a consistent part of this rotation.
That's the voice of Hugh Straine from Ball Durham, joining us once again here on Locked On Blue Devils. You take this opportunity, if you will, my friend, and promote your work and how people can support you.
I'm the site expert over at balldurham.com. That's BALLDURHAM.com. Got everything you guys need. Duke recruiting, football, basketball, any news, we stay on top of it. Go check us out, balldurham.com and ball_Durham on X and Facebook. Give us a follow. Stay up to date with everything Duke news. Always fun being on here, JJ.
Thanks for the time. He will do it again soon, okay?
Sure. Have a good one.
All right, that's Hugh Straine joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring us to a close here today. Duke basketball back tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network as they take on Army. Should be a really fun game to watch. We'll break it all down for you in the days to come here on Locked On Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to us for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.